Proverbs 17. Better is a dry morsel, and quietness therewith, than a house full of sacrifices with strife. Now, I believe that this is talking about the peace offerings, the sacrifices, because those are the ones in which the person offering the sacrifices also partook. A wise servant shall have rule over a son that causeth shame, and shall have part of the inheritance among the brethren. Now, ironically, and unbeknownst to Solomon, this would actually play out, this particular proverb would play out in his life later on, as he had a servant named Jeroboam, not a son, but a servant named Jeroboam, and he had a son named Rehoboam, in whom succeeded him. And the kingdom would split into two after Solomon's death, and the southern part would go to Rehoboam, his son, and the 10 tribes, the vast majority of the tribes, would migrate northward and create the northern kingdom of Israel, being ruled by his servant Jeroboam. So just as Cambridge notes, if a servant is industrious, he'll share the inheritance with a son that causeth shame. The fining pot is for silver, and the furnace for gold, but the Lord trieth the hearts. A wicked doer giveth heed to false lips, and a liar giveth ear to a naughty tongue. And just as I've brought up in a prior study, my friends, there is a difference between discussing a matter behind someone's back, like a jury or some of that note. You're discussing, trying to figure out the next move for a certain situation, and that of outright slander. Outright slander is what the Bible comes against. You're supposed to actually plan out situations, and if that means discussing something behind someone's back. But anyway, rumors are particularly bad because they slander someone's character unnecessarily, and that is what's talking about. That is an evil thing. You just don't like something about someone, so you go about spreading rumors. That is very, very evil and very taught against by God. Remember, if they gossip with you, they'll gossip about you. Verse 5, whoso mocketh the poor reproacheth his maker, and he that is glad at calamities shall not be unpunished. Children's children, or grandbabies, are the crown of old men, and the glory of children are their fathers. Excellent speech becometh not a fool. You're not going to find a fool with great words. Much less do lying lips a prince. It's unbecoming of anyone in leadership or an exalted position in any area, really. It's unbecoming of that, especially within a church, that of an assistant pastor or even a pastor himself, to have lying lips. A gift is as a precious stone in the eyes of him that hath it. Whithersoever it turneth, it prospereth. Albert Barnes believes that this is a half satirical description of the power of bribery in palaces and among judges. The precious stone is probably a gem thought of as a talisman, which wherever it turns, and whichever way that you direct it towards whichever judicial position even, will ensure prosperity to him who, being the possessor, has the power to give it. Now pay very close attention to verse 9 right here. This helps me very much in my own life. He that covereth the transgression seeketh love, but he that repeateth the matter separateth friends. Now what's being meant right here? Covereth the transgression? In essence, as Ellicott noted, one who does not notice, but rather conceals and excuses anything done against him, like if a friend offends you one night, and we all have these situations. A friend may upset you in some way, say something to you a bit crass, and those in whom will not hold that against them and just say, well, they were just angry. And this happens to me quite frequently, and I'm sure that I also do it to my friends without really noticing it. It doesn't happen often, but whenever it does, we should always just forgive that matter. It's very difficult to forget. I don't believe in the flesh you're able to totally forget things, but to forgive is possible. And that certain man that does this, covers over a transgression, follows after charity, which Paul tells the church that we should do. But once again, let's observe the contrasting clause with this. What comes next? So there's that in whom forgives something said, but then there's that in whom brings it up over and over and over again, be it in their own mind, which sometimes you can't help depending on the magnitude of the insult, or that in which brings it up during conversation. Well, do you remember whenever you said that about me? I remember that, man. And you just keep bringing it up, and that will separate even the best of friends. Just forgive and move on. This life is filled with imperfections. Verse 10, a reproof entereth more into a wise man than 100 stripes into a fool. An evil man seeketh only rebellion. Therefore a cruel messenger shall be sent against him. And Cambridge, referencing the Septuagint, believes that this messenger sent to such a rebellious man could be that of a human, and to which they likened it to the executioners that a king would send to kill a rebellious man. Or an angel, like the Lord. We know that the Lord will send angels. There are invisible entities that'll be sent against you, or the Lord himself, which that's unstoppable. And against whom ultimately all rebellion is aimed, though. All rebellion, be it in any wise. Even if it's just a common criminal within the community, he is a rebel against God ultimately. So that rebel will be dealt with. Verse 12, let the bear robbed of her whelps meet a man rather than a fool in his folly. Because fools, if you try to correct them, they'll become more angry, at least in this figurative sense. They'll become more angry than even a mama bear if you bother her little ones. Verse 13, whoso rewardeth evil for good, evil shall not depart from his house. The beginning of strife is as when one letteth out water, like little cracks in a dam. Therefore, leave off contention before it be meddled with, because it's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse, and eventually it's just going to completely erupt and become a matter uncontrollable. So it's best to just, if you see something coming up that's going to be problematic, it's best, if you can, just drop the issue altogether. If it be just parting company with that person for a day or two, that's fine. But don't allow a strife to build up. He that justifieth the wicked, and he that condemneth the just, even they both are abomination to the Lord. Wherefore is there a price in the hand of a fool to get wisdom, seeing he hath no heart to it? Let's examine that one right there, verse 16. Now, of course, the first one is about siding with evil. And how many people do we know that do this? You can tell someone is blatantly guilty of like the most heinous of crimes, and you'll see a crowd start flocking to them in support of them, and then they'll begin to take up for them. Seen this with the case of Charles Manson, Ted Bundy. He even had a fan base come up, and such are abominable to the Lord. But now let's look at this. And this particular proverb is rather unique because this is about a fool in whom he's trying to actually buy wisdom, but he remains in his heart a fool still. He will still remain a fool, though he himself has paid high for instruction. If he has no capacity for taking it in, if his heart truly isn't seeking after true wisdom, he's really not going to receive it, no matter how much that he pays to go to college, no matter how much that he pays a pastor to tutor him or for a Bible study from his neighbor or whatever, no matter how much. Just like an addict, they know that they have a problem. They know that they need correction. They know where to find the correction. But if their heart's not willing to change, they're not going to change. Now, verse 17, one of the more popular proverbs, a friend loveth at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. Matthew Poole commented on this, a sincere and hearty friend not only loves in prosperity, but also in adversity, when false friends forsake us. And a brother is born for adversity. This doesn't mean that your brother is born to come against you. We know by nature that's not the case. But this means rather that a brother was sent divinely by the Lord himself, that he might comfort and relieve his brother in his adversity. Verse 18, a man void of understanding striketh hands, and becometh surety, in the presence of his friend. Now, once again, we see in verse 18 how Solomon is saying, do not take unnecessary burdens upon yourself like that of a debt for a friend, no matter how close of a friend, because he probably had ill judgment and he's probably not good with money. So Solomon says, do not take that debt upon you. Verse 19, he loveth transgression that loveth strife, and he that exalteth his gate seeketh destruction. Now, verse 19, of course, is talking about a man in whom exalts his gate, meaning that he builds himself up in the world, and thereby he makes himself a target. He wants to look all important and grandiose and rich and all of this, and he makes himself, he seeketh destruction by doing this. Verse 20, he that hath a froward heart findeth no good, and he that hath a perverse tongue falleth into mischief. Once again, guard the heart and the tongue. He that begetteth a fool doeth it to his sorrow, and the father of a fool hath no joy. And of course, such is a note to the sons and daughters out there in whom shame their families, they shame their parents. A merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. A wicked man taketh a gift or a bribe. A wicked man taketh a bribe out of the bosom to pervert the ways of judgment. Wisdom is before him that hath understanding, but the eyes of a fool are in the ends of the earth. He's searching every single spot except where wisdom is, because he has no understanding. He doesn't realize he's only leading to his own death. A foolish son is a grief to his father, and bitterness to her that bare him. Also, to punish the just is not good, nor to strike princes for equity, to which verse 26, to be summarized, is exactly what they did to Christ, being the Prince of Peace. He was stricken. Also, he was just, and they punished him. And the Lord says this is not good, but of course we know that the Lord did use it ultimately for the greatest good, especially, for us. He that hath knowledge spareth his words, and a man of understanding is of an excellent spirit. Paul the Apostle, and I'm still trying to learn what Paul said. I have learned, he says. You know, Paul wasn't born overnight. He was Saul of Tarsus, remember. But he actually learned how to find contentment, even in prisons, even in the midst of a shipwreck. I heard that it's one of the most terrifying things to be out in the middle of the sea and a huge storm rise up, and then you have nowhere else to go. At least on land, you can maybe flee somewhere. But Paul said even in such cases, he found that of a content spirit or an excellent spirit. And I've found, my friends, being a big talker myself, I've found that it's a whole lot better to spare your words, because you will be able to more find that excellent spirit in holding your peace by holding your tongue. So he that spareth his words will more likely gain an excellent spirit. And a very good segue to that is, of course, verse 28, where Solomon notes, even a fool, when he holdeth his peace, doesn't speak very much, is counted wise. And he that shutteth his lips is esteemed a man of understanding. So this is a great push towards don't speak very much. If you have to, then so do it. But if you find yourself in 99% of the situations that we find ourselves in, we usually don't have to speak very much. Just hold your peace. Be content. And you'll find that you'll have more contentment at the end of the day. And mind you, such is a double-edged sword, because whenever you're not speaking, that means that you can listen more. And just as James says, wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear. Okay, so do listen, but slow to speak and slow to wrath.